Hi, guys. This is John Crumpler with the Texans Wire, and today I'm joined by Jordan Pun from Sports Illustrated and Texans Unfiltered. Jordan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. It's the best time of the year. Draft is near, and the Texans finally have premium draft capital. So, man, I'm super excited. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to nerd out a little bit with you and talk football.
Yeah, thank you for making the time to come on. I thought that, like you said, it's the best time of the year, and for the first time in a while, we really do have the potential to upgrade the roster in a pretty dramatic fashion. And I thought it'd be good for you and for me and for anyone who wants to read this article to try to understand. We talk about Lovie Smith's Tampa 2 now that he's the head coach a lot. And it can kind of be difficult when you're reading about the prospects to know exactly where they fit into that. So I thought this would be a good exercise to go through the position groups, talk about what each guy needs to do and what they're tasked with doing, and then kind of sort where prospects that, especially guys we hear about in the first round, where they fit.
Perfect, dude. Let's do it. I think scheme is so important to maximizing and optimizing a team's success on the field. And so hopefully we can give Lovey the guys that he needs to kind of put his scheme to the best use.
Absolutely. All right, so thank you to Football Advantage for this picture I found, and let's get started. I'm going to move the slide forward. So let's start with the defensive tackles on the D line, and I want to start at the very interior. So in the 4-3, it's called the 4-3 because you have four down defensive linemen. And Jordan, feel free to jump in at any time. And the first guy who's mostly responsible for stopping the run is your nose tackle. Your nose tackle lines up in between the center and the guard, and he's responsible for engaging the center and the guard. Ideally, someone needs to eat two blocks, and your nose tackle is there to do that in the 4-3, and really just disrupt that interior A gap. Right now, Roy Lopez does that for us. Jordan, what would you want to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I would say in this 4-3 Tampa 2 defense, for this particular role, I guess one of the other kind of differentiators between this type of nose tackle and like a 3-4 nose tackle. So think of your like Vince Wilfork type of nose tackle. In this defense, the nose tackle needs to be a bit more athletic. So you're absolutely right in saying they need to occupy those double teams. They need to be able to take on the center and a guard. But then they also need to be able to have a quick first step to penetrate the gaps, to win to the play side, and kind of force the run back and make a cutback. So that's kind of the slight differences between a 3-4 nose tackle and a 4-3 nose tackle that we implement. And so looking and applying that to draft prospects, you're going to want to look at guys who not only have the size and the physicality and the power, but also have at least some sort of athletic ability, some sort of explosiveness and agility, and aren't just super big guys that can't move at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and probably one of the biggest prospects in the draft in terms of coverage and debate for college football fans are going to be very familiar with him is Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis, he probably represents one of the most athletic nose tackles we've seen in the draft in a long time. Jordan, is it fair to say that if we took Jordan Davis from Georgia at 13 overall, this is the role he'd project into and where fans should envision him?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's the biggest man on the field all the damn time. He's first guy off the bus type of vibes. And you're gonna want to put him as close to the center as possible. So he can occupy that center, take on that guard, eat up those double teams. And what that's gonna do is allow your second level defenders, your linebackers, to run free. And that's why that Georgia defense clicks so well. That's why all three of those linebackers are going to get drafted. A big part of their thanks has got to go to Jordan Davis for keeping them free from blockers and just allowing them to run free. So that's the idea of Jordan Davis for sure.
Yeah. So that's the nose tackle position. Next is the three technique defensive tackle. And this was verbiage that I was less familiar with before I started texting with Jordan, kind of putting together the idea for this article. So Jordan, why don't you talk about the three technique?
Yeah, I think it's a good branch off of the nose tackle. So the nose tackle is also called in our 4-3 defense, it's going to be the one. And so it's the one technique because it's one gap away from the center. So if you imagine, if you're looking at the photo that John put up on the screen right now, and if you were to kind of put gaps, like put columns aligning with like the center, the guard, and the tackle. Kind of imagine 3 columns like that. So your center, that's going to be your 0 gap. And then you see that with nose tackle is kind of in between the center and the guard. That's your 1 gap. That's the gap that's 1 gap away from the center. So that's why that's called the 1 technique. And so the 3 technique defensive tackle is going to be 3 gaps away from the center. So we're looking at the left guard on this picture. In between the center and left guard, that's the 1 gap. Right over the guard, that's 2 gap. And so the DT, the 3 tech, will usually align in between that guard and the tackle in the 3 technique position. So that's kind of the alignment breakdown of where they're going. And the kind of whole idea of that position is rather than being the guy to take on the double team between the center and the guard like the nose tackle does, the 3 technique is supposed to be kind of isolated on their own. They're trying to turn that guard into a one-on-one matchup, kind of like how a defensive end has a 1-1 matchup versus a tackle. And so the idea of the 3 technique is to get kind of this hybrid between an edge rusher and a nose tackle. So he's kind of a bit bigger than a defensive end, but he's still very athletic, can get after the quarterback, and can pass rush one-on-one versus a guard. And so that's why we got a guy like Malik Collins. That's why I love that signing, because it was a perfect scheme fit as a 3 technique defensive tackle. He's quick, he's explosive. You want him to be more of a pass rusher than a run defender. And it's honestly the most important position in Lovie Smith's defense, that 3 tech defensive tackle.
Wow. And that's why bringing back Collins was clearly such a priority for the coaching staff. Would you say that Blacklock plays the same position, or is he more of a nose?
He's kind of a weird tweener because in college, he did a little bit of everything. He mainly did play nose in college. But the thing is that he's kind of small to be a nose full time. And so I think he would be better at 3 tech, where he can just kind of be a super athletic guy, be super quick, and kind of maximize his athletic gifts, because that's kind of what he has going for him right now. He's an athlete. He's not so much of a technician. And so just simplify his role, put him at 3 tech, let him be fast, let him eat one-on-one blocks. I would say that's his best role, kind of as the backup to Malik Collins.
Yeah. And from what I understand, in this draft, when we talk about a 3 technique, at least the name that people should be familiar with at the top, I don't think we'll pick him, but it wouldn't shock me. Devontae Wyatt from Georgia is kind of the defining 3 technique from this class, from my understanding. Is there anyone else that you would tell us to look out for?
Yeah, the only other 3 tech I would take in the first round is Perion Winfrey out of Oklahoma. We got to watch him down at the Senior Bowl, just absolutely wreak havoc. And the interesting thing about him is he mainly played nose tackle at Oklahoma in college, and they kind of misused him in that regard. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest run defender, but he's a great pass rusher. He's great at shooting gaps, and so that's why he fits better at the 3 tech. But he's the only other guy I would take in the first round. Maybe some day 2 guys would be Matthew Butler, C. But other than that, there's not many other options.
Okay. And so that's a good distinction to keep in mind when and if the Texans draft a defensive tackle. They're going to fit into one of these 2 prototypes for Lovie Smith's defense, most likely. And then that brings us to the edge rushers. So, and the defensive ends, much more clear. I think most fans are familiar with what they do. In the run game, your defensive ends are responsible for setting the edge and forcing things up towards the linebackers and towards those collapsing defensive tackles. And then on passing downs, it's pretty simple. Pin your ears back and go get the quarterback. This is where we saw Jonathan Grenard take such a huge step forward in 2021. Jordan, what would you have to say about the edges in the Tampa 2?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit it nail on the head. Their first main responsibility is to just get upfield, get after the quarterback, just play fast and play physical. The main distinction that I would kind of bring up is just understanding the strong and the weak side defensive end. So in this diagram, you see the strong side D end is going to be the one that aligns on the side of the tight end. And so in this example, it's on the left side. And so that role is best occupied for the Texans by Jonathan Grenard. That's how he got majority of his sacks, is being able to line up on the tight end side and be able to pass rush against the tight end, who just, they aren't as good as tackles in pass protection. And so he was really great at taking advantage of that. And so that's the passing down contributions from the strong side D end. On the run game side of things, he's going to have to be a little stronger, a little bigger, have longer arms so that he can take on double teamed by the tight end and the tackle at the point of attack. So that's a strong side role. And then the weak side can be your Jacob Martin, a little bit more athletic guy, a little quicker, might not be the better run defender, but you really want him to be a pass rush expert to go against those tackles because he'll be isolated, farther aligned, and have a wider alignment. And so he can use his speed to get upfield and attack the quarterback that way. So that's kind of the only other distinctions I would make in terms of the strong and weak side DNs.
No, those are great points. And I think defensive ends that's a position Texans fans are going to hear a lot about. We all know it looks like a lock. Aiden Hutchinson will be the #1 overall pick to Jacksonville. But after that, it's perfectly possible that Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker, Jermaine Johnson, or George Karlaftis could end up on the team, whether that's at 3 or 13. Obviously, the caliber of guy is going to depend on where we take them. I'll ask you about 2 guys. So Jermaine Johnson, is it fair to say he's the best against the run in this edge class?
I think so. I think it's going to be between him and Trayvon Walker. Walker might be more versatile where you can line him up inside and outside. But I think Jermaine just has that dog mentality, that physicality that especially the Texans have been preaching that they want to play as their on-field identity is be a fast team and be a physical team and fly to the football. Like that is the epitome of Jermaine Johnson. His motor is nonstop revving. He can play on the strong side. He can play on the weak side. He can play with his hand in the dirt. He can play from a 2-point stance. He's got these really long arms. He's super strong. Like he's well built. Like he's got a muscular, like grown man body already. There's not going to be any transition period for that. Like I think he's pro ready from day one in terms of run defender. So I do think he's the best.
And if he was drafted, do you think that moves Jonathan Grenard to the weak side potentially?
I think you can play. I think, okay, here's how I would break it down is I would say Jonathan Grenard is going to be a better strong side than he'll be a weak side defensive end. And I think Jermaine can do both equally well. So I would keep Grenard on the strong side and just put Jermaine on the weak side.
And then if I had to ask, who do you think is the best fit across from Grenard? I'm personally a big fan of Kayvon Thibodeau. But if you had to pick one of these 4 guys, who are you putting with Grenard to attack the quarterbacks?
You already got it, man. You already got it. Kayvon Thibodeau. Let's go, John. Yeah, no, he's the ideal weak side defensive end in a 4-3 defense because he can set the edge. He's pretty solid at it, but he's not going to really, push tackles back past the line of scrimmage. Not like Jermaine Johnson will, not like Trayvon Walker will, but where he's really good and where one of his biggest knocks is, people always say his motor is bad. But I kind of disagree with that because when I see him and he's on the weak side of a run and the run is going away from him, he's not just lazy and just kind of giving up on the play. He's actually chasing it from the backside. And that's where his elite speed really shows up, chasing the run from the backside and being a good weak side defender on that defensive end. So I think he'd be perfect to complement Grenard.